All right, it's 7 o'clock. I'm going to call a meeting to order. Roll call.
Michael Dowery.
Present.
Ronald Cabana.
He's not coming. He called me sick.
Frederick Shimura. David Hosmer.
Here.
Glenn Leslie.
Here.
David Horton.
Here.
David Richardson.
Here.
Roy Bradrick.
Here.
Jeffrey Kelleher.
Here. Okay, next order of business is seeking alternate. We need an alternate.
I'll make a motion that we seat Roy Bradrick.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Next item is approve the minutes of the March 15th regular meeting. It says tabled on here, but we did get the minutes. I hope everybody got the minutes. Oh, okay.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Okay, any discussion? No discussion on the minutes? Have a hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Next one is review Proposition 46 allowable calculations. Everyone has all their paperwork. Is there Is there a motion to take and approve these calculations so that we can have a discussion on them?
So moved. Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I have a comment.
Okay,
This is way early for the calculation of Prop 46. This calculation can't be made until the final budget is arrived at. Especially this year because there happens to be numbers in here for special ed that raise the number above the grand list. And that final number won't be known until at least the meeting after the 5th of April. This is exactly the thing that got people in trouble back in 2004, 5, 6, and 7. That's approving the Prop 46 calculation that was not based on a final budget. It can't be done.
final budget or final revenue?
Final budget, because the Prop 46 calculation sheet has to jive with the final Board of Education budget. And we don't have a final Board of Education budget. We won't have one until the meeting, at least the meeting after the public hearing. And it could go one more meeting after that.
We should have, but we have to have some guidelines there so that we can come up with some budget figures.
You gotta, actually what you gotta use is common sense and see where special education turns out to be. But you cannot use this number as the final calculation until you've got a final budget. Otherwise, the Board of Education budget and the Prop 46 worksheet will not coincide, and they need to coincide before this goes to a town meeting in May.
So you're waiting for the reimbursement rate to be set from the state, is that the number you're waiting for?
No, you gotta wait for the final budget. Now, we don't know what the final Board of Education budget is gonna be. I'm assuming that there are gonna be adjustments made to it from what the initial proposal was. And I'll have more comments on that after. But you can't finalize the Prop 46 worksheet until you have that final budget. What was happening, that I referred to back in 2004, 5, 6, 7, is they would do exactly this. They would put together the Prop 46 calculation sheet based on the initial Board of Education proposal. And then when you get to the final Board of Education proposal, virtually every year, either transportation expense would be cut, or special education expense would suddenly be cut. In many cases by $100,000. Yet, the Prop 46 worksheet would not reflect the change, which will make the whole budget out of whack with Prop 46.
So this is like last year, this is just for information, we'll put it together.
If you do it for informational purposes, that's fine,
Yeah.
but you cannot approve this
No.
because it's not final. It's interesting now.
You have to do, you have to come up with some figures here so you can advise the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen what their limits are gonna be.
Well, if what you're gonna do is say,
So they'll have an idea of how much they would have to cut from their proposed budget.
if what you're gonna do is say, we wanna calculate the Prop 46 limit and spend to the limit, and then, I'm not quite sure why we spent a whole year doing this, but, that means that they gotta go back and adjust their budgets. They're gonna adjust them, they're gonna come back. Chances are, that number is gonna change, and then we're gonna do it again.
That would only be the special ed and transportation, the only two,
Those are the only two things that are budget related.
right. So if they don't change those two, if they don't have any, put it in final increase, or they don't change the special ed amount, then that will not affect the Prop 46.
That is correct.
You have a
But I'm
comment?
telling you, that the
But it's
history
not the whole
is,
budget.
no. They're gonna adjust their budget to come down to a number.
Yes.
And if you go back and look, what you'll find is that number changes.
If they adjusted those two lines.
Historically, it gets adjusted. So if you start banking, it gives you some guidelines to say, the most that could possibly be spent is $380,000. And what we got is $599 from the Board of Ed and another $77 from the town. So, at least $300,000 has to get cut. And that's a minimum. But after that 300,000 gets cut, it can affect this, and then it could be another iteration. And that's only if you're gonna go to the maximum. But this board's gonna decide whether they're gonna go to the maximum or not at some point.
Donna, you had something you wanted to add?
I just want to respectfully disagree that as long as I've been treasurer, any changes that have occurred with the schools, anything that affects Prop 46, I've made those adjustments.
You have.
So I want to make that record clear. And tonight, this is for you all to have an educated, I want you to be as informed as you have ever been. I've even created a memo on how Prop 46 is calculated, because there's misconceptions that the grand list is the only money that's allowed, and there's a lot of factors that come into play. And I'm hoping you have a better understanding how Prop 46 is calculated. And I don't think it's unreasonable of the Board of Finance to let the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed know what the allowable is gonna be, potentially. And if this needs to be revised, then it will be revised. But there's no reason why we can't move forward on this tonight and give them some direction. Because there's a lot of information that they're gonna have to adjust in their budgets. And also, I have to create all the revenues and expenditures in an ad by state statute. So all that stuff takes time. So we need to move forward appropriately. And if there are changes, I will make sure that that adjustment is made and you will all be informed.
I agree with what Donna just said. Potentially, it's a guideline, but you can't just approve this as a calculation and this is it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It ain't it.
We can amend the calculations when we have better numbers.
If that makes you feel better, Dave, that's fine. I'm just telling you, you can't use this number.
Yes, that's fine, correct.
Okay.
Unbelievable.
Are
Are we comfortable with that $267,000 number? Is that, so is that based on 60 or 80% reimbursement?
You had that,
That was
77.
77%, I believe.
And we're pretty comfortable that that's a real number this year? That we're going to get the 77% reimbursed?
I spoke with Karen Donovan, he said possibly 80, and 77 is a very close, good number to use.
It's a safe number. Knowing the state, it could be lower, but that's the safest number we came up with.
What was it
Well,
last year? Do you remember what it was last year? Because we've had this 60-80% conversation the last couple of years.
correct.
Was it 80% last year, Victor?
I believe that's what we had in there, was 80%.
Slightly over 80.
Slightly over 80.
Okay, that's a pretty safe number.
Well, actually, the letter from the state said 75 to 77, as I recall. I think that's what Kevin Chambers put forward. But that's not the real issue, Glenn. The real issue is, for example, when that budget was presented, I asked the question, what was the bulk of that 267? And what I was told was it was mostly outplaced special education students. Since then, I've gotten the information on the special ed students, and the increase due to outplaced special ed students, and this is from actual to budget, is $73,000 for outplaced students. If you go budget to budget, it's $97,000. So the obvious question is, where's the other 160,000 coming from? What's driving that? And I have a whole bunch of questions about that, if you want to do it now, but I thought maybe we'd do it with the combined budget discussion, not with the Prop 46 discussion.
Okay. Any other comments on the Prop 46 calculations?
How does the motion be heard?
To approve the Proposition 46 calculations as a guideline.
I move that. That we approve this as a guideline.
So you're amending the motion, right? Putting the motion on the table.
There will, I think, no, just an open discussion.
Okay.
Okay, any further comments on this? Do you want to take and adopt this for planning purposes?
I did make a motion.
Yeah.
I move that we adopt this as a guideline.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, now, the next item is to discuss the combined budget and revenue. Let's take a look at the revenue sheet first. Donna, you want to go with the revenues?
These are very conservative estimates based on the reports that I sent to all of you from the state. A lot of the information from the taxes come from Linda, and with all that information, I project that we'll have similar revenue as we did last year based on the current collection rate and mill rate. I did take into consideration from March 17th, the Mira, and they're projecting a lot of revenues that aren't gonna be funded. One of them is the $24 million deposit into the sales tax revenue sharing program for cities and towns. And what they said that they haven't made their first deposit, their second deposit is due on June 30th, and they don't see how they're gonna have the funds to fund it. So I took all of that into consideration with these revenues. It's very conservative. If we do end up with extra money at the end of this new fiscal year coming up, then that money would be applied to offset the mill rate for next year, which is a reval year. So, any questions?
So where would that sales tax revenue line item be if it was included in,
I did include some of it in the miscellaneous grant, in the
Okay.
final, in that right column to even out the funds.
the 67?
Yeah, 772. If it does come in, it would go there, and that money would be used to offset next year's mill rate, which could be a difficult year with a reval.
So how
But I
much-
don't anticipate getting it, because a lot of the chatter on our GFOA now is we're gonna get nothing. It's about 140,000,
140?
yes.
So where's that 672 coming from?
I just balanced out for the sheet.
Okay.
I balanced out. It's a very conservative revenue sheet, and it will get updated as we go along with the process of each quarter. So before the budget passed, I would be redoing this again, so you would have better data. And we have a tax sale, Linda?
Yep.
That will adjust the sheet as well, so this is the most recent information that I am sure on.
We have a tag sale.
Tax.
Tax.
So if I have additional, so if I have additional revenue, it'll go up top where it says under over with the 80,092. So that will go higher, and then it will be there'll be less of a mill rate increase.
And it's all subject to change if and when the state finally passes the budget.
Right, and
Which hopefully they'll pass their budget before we pass ours.
Never have.
not like
And I know it'll never happen. Any other discussion on the revenue sheet? Combined budgets. Now you want to ask your questions?
Sure. On the Board of Insight, what's the district special education overhead distribution to Woodstock Academy? Last year it was $7,000 per student.
To the Woodstock Academy?
Yeah.
Well, the overall increase, we did have a substantial increase at the Academy special ed cost of $107,000 this year, from last year to this year.
Now, that includes the, well, that doesn't include the student that is assigned to Woodstock Academy, does it? Because that number is roughly the same.
No, it would be, it's a combination of their EastCom program in addition to their regular resource room charges.
Oh, okay. So you don't know how much of it is from the district that's being charged to Woodstock Academy?
I don't know the breakdown, but I can get that to you.
Okay. Do you know how many students, special ed students there are at Woodstock Academy?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
How about at WPS?
WPS, we have about 98 pre-K through 8th grade.
Okay, so without the pre-K, it's about 80 or so.
Sure.
Okay, so that's about the same as last year. All right, the reason I bring that up is, last year, there were 20 students at Woodstock Academy that were in the sort of general special education category. And the district was charging about $7,000 per student in an overhead distribution from the district to Woodstock Academy. We had 80 students at WPS, so that's about 100 students. At $7,000 per student, that leaves an infrastructure or overhead cost of about $700,000. The total cost for special ed students that are these special cases, the outplay students, this year, after excess cost reimbursement, is $876,000. That's a little more than 25% of the total special ed budget. So, you know, typically when we talk about special ed, the first thing that comes up is outplay students or the big cost. Well, the big cost isn't outplay students. They only account for 25% of the expense. The infrastructure is almost as large as the total of the outplay students, 700 grand. That's why I was asking the question. I think you already knew that. Sort of, when we're looking at a $267,000 increase for next year, out of that 267, the most that you can come up with is $97,000 that are outplay students. So there's $160,000 of increase in special ed costs built into this budget. And I think we would need to understand where that $160,000 comes from. Because at the same time that we're having these increases, we're having decreases in enrollment. What's the expected difference in Title I and Title II next year?
I'd have to ask Karen. I can get that to you tomorrow if you want.
Okay. I know that that's probably a problem because I think they already lost $62,000 this year. Title I and Title II are, for lack of a better way of putting it, sort of off-book grants. You never see them in the town count. They pay for primarily special ed expenses off-book. As Victor just said, I'm pretty sure it's like $62,000 this year. There's a good chance that next year is going to be less. Or I should say that the amount of money we're going to get is less. So it's going to be an even greater expense. So the question becomes, how much of that is being shifted over to the 10 account? And if it is, that's not an increase in special ed. It's a shifting of expenses from a Title I, Title II to account 10, and not an increase in special ed spending. That's another question. Are we still standing on a 267 for the increase in special ed as of today?
Well, last I met with Mrs. Listill and Karen, that's the number we're still looking at. Hopefully it's not going to go up anymore.
When I asked about this last week, you said the excess cost hadn't been, this hadn't been adjusted for excess cost.
I was mistaken. It was already adjusted.
Because there's a significant difference in the excess cost calculation, even if you knock it down 75%, because that $97,000 is mostly consumed in students that are high cost students. So they effectively get hit with the excess cost reimbursement. So it's an important question. I guess my overall comment is that these two budgets are both turdunkins. That's stuffed, stuffed, and stuffed. And I'll tell you why I say that. In the year that just ended, last June, 2015, we had $400,000 left at the end of the year in the Board of Education budget. 260,000 of it got shifted forward by putting it in the escrow account at Diversified Brokerage Group. 143,000 got put into the non-lapsing account. So we went into the current year with $400,000 more than what was spent before we even got started from the previous year. We added, I believe it was 136,000 to that number for this year's budget. That's $536,000 more spending in 2015-16 than in 2014-15. That's before we even touch anything. At the same time, there are 41 fewer students next year in primarily K through 8. There's, I think, 5 fewer in the academy. The MBR drops by $246,000. That doesn't really mean anything. With zero increase in the new budget, there's $536,000 more money to spend than got spent last year. And it doesn't adjust for the lowering of the enrollment. That's on the Board of Education stuff. On the town hall side, we had a surplus of 196,000. We added, for this year's budget, I think it was 33. It might have been 34 or 32, but kind of just winging it. The debt service went down by $44,000 between last June and this budget that's coming up. That's $273,000 more in spending. That's at zero. That's with zero increase in spending for the new budget. There's at least $30,000 stuffed in the highway budget, and I think John pretty much agreed that it was a little padded here and there. I mean, we just came out of 14-15, one of the worst years we've had for snow removal and things like that we've had in 10 years probably, at least. And yet, we're budgeted at or above what was in there this year. We won't know that until after the 30th of June, how that comes out. So when you look at these two budgets together, a zero increase in spending would be adding almost $900,000 of spending more than we spent in 2015. That's why I say these budgets are stuffed to the gills. That's it.
Anybody else have any comments? No comments?
I'd only like to comment that 2 weeks ago, Victor, I thought, gave a very good presentation and laid out how they were adjusting teachers with the reduced class sizes and gave a good explanation on why they needed curriculum people, et cetera, to come in for the budget, so. I don't totally agree with what Mr. Richardson's saying. I think that we've seen some good presentations on why the funds are needed. And obviously with Prop 46, nobody's going to get what they want anyway after we make the adjustments. And it'll be interesting to see how they can make their budgets work after we tell them what they are allowed to spend. But I don't, it seems to me that we're seeing some pretty realistic projections on trying to make all of our services work as effectively as possible.
Any other comments? And the next question would be, based on the estimated Prop 46 calculations, and based on the percentage that we used last year on dividing up the money, we'll have a rough idea of how much would have to be cut from each of the proposed budgets to take and meet the Proposition 46 calculations, if we wanted to meet Proposition 46. And I would also like to throw one other thing in here, that if we are allowed by the state to take and reduce the education budget by the amount of students that fewer students this year than we had last year. And that would take and have a significant impact on the Woodstock Academy, because the way the regulations are written, we can adjust the amount for high school students by the total amount of tuition that we'd be paying to the academy. So that in turn would take in, me next year, we would be taking and dropping the MBR. And we could have used, I'm trying to remember what the figure was for the elementary school, because it is a town school. I think it was $3,000 a student, $3,000 per pupil. Well, they changed it?
Yeah.
Okay, $6,000 per pupil. So there could be some significant, I wouldn't say savings, but you'd be reducing the education budget by that amount. Is that a possibility that you can take into consideration? I'm not saying I recommend it, particularly at the academy, because the academy's costs are so much higher than per student than they are for the K-8 program. And even with the fewer students that we're sending the academy, there's still an increase in the total education cost for the academy. Although it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be.
Just a reference, Dave, that difference, if you did it that way, is $40,000. Without doing it that way, the overall drops $246,000. So that's just a frame of reference.
So it's up to you as to how you want to do it. But I just wanted to throw that out there as a possibility of what could happen. So last year, the split was it 24?
75.5.
And 24.5. So would we want to use that same split figure?
I would think that we might want to consider making an 80-20 split.
Do we split just the 112? We don't split the 267, correct? Are you talking about this?
No, the entire bill.
No, it's the entire budget, the combined budgets.
That historically is the way it's been done.
That's the way it has been done.
And what that has led to accumulated over the years is, and that's how the town budget got so stuffed. Because whatever was proposed in the education budget, in transportation or special ed, would end up getting split 75-25. They would only get 75% of what that supposed increase was. The other 25% would go to the town, which doesn't sound like much in any given year. If you do that for 10 years in a row, that's how the town ended up with a pretty stuffed budget.
The other thing we need to think about too is that Donna's revenue predictions were based on what the estimate book is, and we all know that's probably not gonna happen.
Not this year.
Not this year. I think, that's early on estimates. I think the legislature is probably gonna cut some of those others. Even the amounts that are like reimbursements for elderly, there's parts of the statute says they only have to reimburse what's budgeted. So if they don't budget 100%, towns don't get 100%. So I think we have to be a little more conservative on, and maybe have some cushion for the lack of revenue from the state.
Yeah, something on what Fred just said, I sent around the grants thing, and it was a spreadsheet. If you looked at that, the state's a little sneaky with the way they do this. But between 2009 and 2016, we lost almost $500,000 in grant money. They don't touch the ECS or the block grants because that's really visible. What they do is they keep nibbling around the edges. And it's slowly been shrinking. And they're gonna do it again.
It's been shrinking for an awful long time because the amount of grant money or the amount of money that we get from the state, the percentage of that to our total budget has been dropping every single year. Which means that money has been dropping every single year, and which means that we've had to take in,
Yeah, the budgets are doing this, and they're doing that. Well, they're not really doing, they're doing this.
yeah,
And the next couple of years are gonna get really ugly. I mean, they're gonna come up with a couple $2 billion, and they haven't adjusted for April yet. I'm still waiting to see where that 220 to 260 is gonna end up.
So following on what both Fred and Dave are saying, it seems like we need to make certain that we go to the maximum $112,000 allowable, because we may be losing revenue on the other side. We're going to need that tax revenue to try to make this budget balance.
well, we also have to remember that we have a healthy fund balance that we can take and tap into to take and help keep the tax rate down, to take and make up for some of the revenue that we're not getting. But that's been one of the good things about having our fund balance up, because we do have the fund balance policy, and we're right at the max of our fund balance policy, so we could take and use that to help keep the tax rate down.
But if what Dave is saying is true, if we're going, and certainly by everything you read, the state's in dire fiscal straits, that we may not want to tap into that this year. If we don't have to, we may want to try to hold that in reserve.
It's a good question.
But what you can do is make a rational guesstimate on
That's
what the
right.
grants are gonna be, and you base the budget on that. And if in fact, in July or August, when they finally get around to it, if we get whacked for a couple $100,000, then it comes out of the general fund, and it isn't too bad, if it's a couple $100,000. If it's 600,000, that's a whole
different ballgame.
different ballgame.
But the thing is, we can take in, by the time we're actually passing the budget and taking it to the voters, we'll have a much better idea of what the revenue's gonna be and how much we could take out the fund balance if necessary. So, I wouldn't consider, I wouldn't necessarily think we'd have to do that right now. We'd have to take and determine, based on what figures that we have now, as to what, how to direct the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education as to how much they should take and, have as a guideline for what their proposed budgets for taking the public hearing would be.
My question is, do we presume that we are going to fund the maximum allowable under Proposition 46? Or do we initially use the arbitrary lower amount with the option if the state does stiff us, we can then justify a higher tax rate? What has been the traditional method?
Well, the traditional method, depending on how far back you want to go to be traditional, has not necessarily been to go to the limit. Okay, it's just the past few years that we have gone to the limit each year because of the cost, the increased cost.
And yet we theoretically will close out with, if Richard's, David's calculations are correct, we went to the max and there's several hundred thousand dollars that was not spent, that's theoretically there.
That's true. But I would also like to point out on the Board of Education side, there is no provision in the Board of Ed budget for contingency. There is no contingency fund. So a 1 or 2% overage, to me, is acceptable at the end of the year, is acceptable, because it, granted, it's probably built in, but there's also been cost savings each year that the board might have used, and they haven't really spent every single nickel and dime during the course of the year, because who knows what's gonna happen. If they get another special ed kid in, that's gonna take an effect, or whatever the case may be.
That happened to Killingly actually a couple of years ago when they really cut the budget in the education, had higher special ed, and they had to actually have the special town meeting to appropriate to cover the special ed costs because they cut it so tight.
Can a non-lapsing fund be used for that?
No.
No.
No, not for special ed.
That would have going back to here and then to a town meeting for appropriation. They cannot do it internally.
Because that is, for us, the way we've set up the non-lapsing account is for capital type improvements that have been delayed because there has not been sufficient money in the budget to take care of the maintenance. And that's why maintenance has been deferred for so many years.
I have a suggestion. I've done a few hundred budgets over the years. The easiest thing on everybody would be for the Board of Education in the town to go back. Let's say there's $100,000 available. Then you split it 75-25. Go back and adjust their budgets to hit those targets. And then have in their pocket 3, 4, or 5 things that if there's more money, here's what we would add back in. Because it's a whole lot easier to do that and to work up to a number than to just keep hammering the number down and hammering the number down and then hammering it down again as the revenues fall. And honestly, like on a town's case, they only got $77,000 in there for an increase anyway. 20% of the 380, $76,000.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
That doesn't seem fair to the Board of Ed to ask them to go back and cut, and go down to $75,000.
I'm not saying it's fair, it's not fair. I'm just saying that if they do that, they put together a budget, this is kind of the bare bones number. And if there's more money available, you have those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items that you would want to add back in. That's easy to do. That's a lot easier to do than at the last minute having to cut another $100,000, another $75,000.
well, the Board of Education, I should say, Dr. Barron in the past has taken and frozen the budget very early in the year. And to make sure that he did have enough money available for anything that, emergency type thing that came up. And from what I have been told, the items that were frozen out were on a list to be put back in at the end of the year. And
We're talking about two different things. I'm talking about,
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. But basically, he was doing the same thing. He had items that he was gonna take and have a priority list, that he was gonna add back in if he had the money.
you know, he wasn't doing it to the budget. He was stuffing money away in the corner. And then at the end of the year,
That's
he was
right.
going on a spending spree.
To take up the things that he had frozen during the course of the year, okay, which is basically the same thing.
That's not
Just
fair.
screw that out.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
You wanna see the numbers?
Well, I
We
think
all know-
your assessment is not fair, not that the numbers aren't what you're saying.
You don't know, every Board of Education in the area stops spending money throughout the year because they don't know what's going to happen with special ed. And then the end of the year comes, and if they haven't had the children move in, then they can finally release them, maybe buy a couple computers, or buy some books, or other things that, those discretionary items that they haven't been able to spend before that. And then it appears to the citizens that they're spending money unnecessarily, but they're not spending it unnecessarily. They're just finally able to spend the items that they'd already budgeted. It was already in the budget.
Yeah, but Glenn, there's one thing when you're talking about $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. If you go back and look at those budgets and the way that spending went, and I did, when you have a month where you're spending 3 times the monthly spending rate, or you have in one day, the last day of the year, writing $300,000 in checks in one day, that's not buying a few computers. And they actually used to do that. It's been tempered in, more recent times. But it got pretty outrageous. But that's not what the issue is here. What we're talking about, what I was suggesting is they put together a budget with a much lower target and have in the pocket some items they would like to add back in again. And then if there's more money, you stop shoving the items back in. But I agree with you. Most of the money ought to go to the Board of Education, not to the town. The town budget just plain doesn't need more money.
So we need to decide 2 things. We need to decide if we're gonna go to the max allowed Proposition 46 wise, and what the percentage is gonna be. Those 2 things, and we need to do that tonight through guidance to our 2 other boards so that they can come back to us with more realistic numbers.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, all
I
right.
mean, it's not firm, I mean,
It's not firm.
but
Right, okay, so I would like to move that we take the budget, that we recommend the budget be to the maximum amount allowed in Proposition 46, which in my mind is only $112,000 from the grand list.
No, 380.
Well, okay,
Three-
I'm sorry, let me just read from the paper. I move that we recommend that the allowable budget goes to the maximum amount allowed under Prop 46, and that we split it. Dave's recommendation was 80-20.
It was. Yes.
Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion? Hearing none, is there another suggestion?
I would move that we, for guidance purposes, go to $280,000 with an 80-20 split.
In other words, you're suggesting that they take and knock $100,000 off the total budget?
Yes. That's base. In case of decreasing grants or changes in the state.
I will second that.
Any further discussion on this? And you're talking still the same 80-20%?
We do that one more time.
That's 56,224.
It's less than that. I think it's more than that. That's a 0.25 mil increase.
Yeah, I'm not talking mils.
Oh.
No, no.
Yeah, at 80-20.
Okay, what, how about some numbers?
56,000 for the town,
No,
and
total,
224.
total for the town, total for the Board of Ed.
I'll calculate that. It's a $56,000 increase for the town, and that's $224,000 increase for the Board of Ed. So the Board of Ed goes from 16,628,004 to 16,852,004. Yes, you did.
Give or take.
I don't know that, I think we did that on the
All right, it's the 16,628,000, what? That's 224,000. 28 and 24, I think is 52. Plus 200 is $16,852,004.
Okay, so you've got your figures for your motion.
Accept the amendment to the motion.
Okay. Second to that.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion on the dollar amounts for the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen?
No, I have to say that, particularly on the Board of Ed side, we had a strong presentation about why they need the money, or why they need to increase funding, and we're already cutting it back significantly. And I think you can make the strong argument that just this past November, the citizens, or as Dave would say, the taxpayers of this town voted overwhelmingly to approve Prop 46. And Prop 46 by definition says that the budget can go up by the amount of the grand list. And that's what we're talking about here. $112,000 the grand list is going up, and we're not even going to go to that. I don't know, I think that's outrageous that we have the lowest funded school system in the state. We're close to the bottom, maybe not the lowest, and we're not even going to that.
Actually, we're last for two reasons. One is Woodstock Academy, and two is if you look at non-instructional expenses, Woodstock had very low non-instructional expenses. There was a thing that was sent around from the Hartford Current that will allow you to go in and look at various components of the education budget, and when you look at instructional expenses, we're sitting right down the middle.
You know, I'm sure statistically you can look at it however you want. And even if you say the academy is saving, so that means the academy is not funded properly either.
Academy's funded just fine. They're a private institution. They have to compete.
I think with these numbers, I think they cut it below what we're allowed to do properly. Prop 46 is not, it's not right. I think we let the people, like we did last year. They approved it last year, we approved the full budget 2 years in a row.
Well, you proposed that.
I know.
You made your
I made my
proposal,
argument.
and it was not seconded. This is the motion that's on the floor, so that's the motion we're gonna be voting on. Any other
I mean,
comments?
we can still raise it after the public hearing.
That's right.
This is just guidance.
This is just guidance.
You know, if the feedback comes back from the public and the public hearing, we can still increase it. This is not final numbers.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the number for the town.
Dollar amount?
Yeah, I did not get that.
I don't have that one memorized, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's an increase of $56,000.
Would be, 5,344,000. 5 million. Sorry about that. Last year anyway, it was 5,386,288, and we're adding 56,000.
No, we gotta add the redemption as well.
So what was the number?
I don't have it.
You're not making it easy.
Not making it easy. All right, so it would be 5,442,288.
5,422,288.
5,442,288.
Oh, 42. Okay, thank you.
Could you say what the number is for the?
$4.
$16,852,004.
No.
Special ed is 267.
Part of this number. This number here, is last year's final number. Yeah. And add 56,000.
I mean, as long as I yeah, so they can look in the final budget.
That's it.
You got it right.
15.
I think so.
Yes.
You got the number for him?
Yes, yes, it's good with that.
Okay. All those
Excuse me,
in favor-
Dave, would you be willing to just entertain a comment from myself?
Pardon?
Would you be willing to entertain a comment from,
Before we vote?
if you'd be so kind?
Okay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. According to the, Mr. Richardson's number, he was correct that the outplacements were, I think your number was 93,000 towards the increase, Dave. But if you also add on top of that the 107 from the academy special ed increase, that's a good portion of that 267. That 267, as Glenn mentioned earlier, is if we go below that, it's going to be cutting from the regular ed K-8 budget. It's going to be a pretty devastating cut. So I would just give you that feedback that if you could reconsider that and take a look at that again, it would be imperative to stabilize the education budget.
I think you gotta break down that special ed, because, that 267, there's gotta be a big chunk of that that's just going into infrastructure. And that includes part of that 107.
Would you be willing to come in tomorrow and I'll sit down with you and Mrs.
Sure.
Listilla? All right, thank you.
I have a question along that special ed. How many special ed students have been reevaluated this year? As to what their needs are, and with that reevaluation, how much was an increase in special ed costs?
Right, the students are reevaluated every year to reassess, so some of those costs could be attributed to the reevaluations. Adding teacher assistants for certain students, additional testing, things like that. So that would raise the amount.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to mention so that other people would understand the same thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, Donna?
Could I add one other? If they're not funded for their special ed, they will be entitled to come back to the town for additional appropriation. So that needs to be taken into consideration as well. And they have not done that for many years, as long as I've been here. But that is something that they could do. So everything really needs to be looked at before you make your final decision. And this cut is below what they were asking for special ed. They're asking for 267.7, and the last number I heard was 224. That's not even funding their special ed. So I can guarantee if it stays the way it is, they're gonna come back to us for an additional appropriation. And at least if we do it in the Prop 46, the taxpayers will be affected by the note. If they come back after, we're not gonna have that opportunity to spread it out. So
Actually,
please take those
If they come
things.
back after, it's a bigger problem.
Yes, it would be. It'll deplete our fund balance, part of it. So I think we really need to take everything into consideration. That's all I have to say.
Actually, there's an even bigger problem than one Donna pointed out. If we went to the maximum of Prop 46 and had to come back, we not only have to approve more money, we have to amend Prop 46. And as some people may have learned, that doesn't go well.
Would you actually have to amend it, or would it be considered an emergency situation?
That's not an emergency. Emergencies are not planning issues. But that's also, every year, this thing about outplaced students comes up in a sudden huge increase. The town's liable for $56,000, and somewhere between 23 and 27% of the balance. So if you had $1 million, then you can get up to 100,000. Yeah, it's.
But this happens in
Yeah.
every, but it's not just Woodstock, Mr. Richardson, it happens in every town across the state.
Yes,
You
but
have a-
no other town across the state has a Prop 6 limitation.
True, but I mean, right, but the IEP is written, the board has no choice, they have to pay for whatever the IEP directs them to do, that's federal law. And so it happens, and I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's not fair to, what we're saying now to Victor is, pay for those IEP students that he has to, but take it out of the other kids' funds. That's what we're doing right now.
If you want to look through the rest of that budget, if you can't find several $100,000 stuffed in that budget, you're not looking. Because as I pointed out earlier, last year's spending,
To do that already.
last year's spending to this year's spending,
Step
with
up.
zero extra money, zero, is $536,000. That's all the special ed spending, plus, what's that, $270,000 more. That's with zero. What we're saying is 224,000, which means it's all the special ed spending, plus $500,000, and it's 41 fewer students. You can't plan for what if. I mean, because you can make up any scenario you'd like. And it could happen tomorrow, it could happen on 2nd of July, or next October, you just don't know. So you can't just say, well, we'll throw an extra $300,000-400,000 in there, let the taxpayers put the money up, and we'll see what happens. I mean, it's the same discussion we had last year when the same issue came up.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Just only to remind everybody, it's a preliminary number.
That's correct.
We can change the shift of the percentage if we need to. And along with the $56,000 that we're tentatively giving to the general government, we also have $41,000 in redemption debt.
And the thing is, this is a preliminary figure that we have to take to the public hearing so that we can get the public's opinion of what this is. And then we have to take and make our adjustments according to what the public wants, because that's our job. Okay? So let's take and vote this thing up or down. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So moved. Okay, now we move on to old business. First item on the old business is update the policy manual, which is tabled, and I imagine we're gonna table it again.
Earlier, July.
I think we tabled it after the budget season. We set an actual date.
Correct. And then the other is the draft on the internal service fund, and that was tabled, and that one's gonna be tabled until June, before the end of the year. And the other one was on the email addresses for the Board of Finance, and that had been tabled.
Why are we tabling now? Did Mr. Walker presented
Right,
a solution, so
so that's,
that really should come off the agenda.
okay. That'll come off the agenda.
Have we decided that's what we're gonna do?
We did not.
We did
We
not.
did not.
We did not. Decided we were going to
Okay.
for
Do we want to take and have separate email addresses for the Board of Finance people, so that any email stuff will come out of our personal email?
So, Mr. Walker, is that what Savage recommended? Is that where the, I mean, just to go and get your own Gmail, is that what they said?
That's a no-cost way to do it.
And this was from Savage?
No,
Was
that's-
that their recommendation, or?
Well, their recommendation is that we want them to do it they'll have us pay for each more account that we put on it, so. And then which board do we stop with? Because we don't provide any emails to anybody outside of the employees in the town.
So how many emails do we have through Savage right now? Just a couple, or?
The people that work in 15, 20, I don't know.
And so, okay, most of the services that I'm familiar with, there's like thresholds, like you get 50 for one price and 100 for another price and 3,000 for another. So was that what you looked at, that you'd have to go to the next tier or something?
We
It would be
looked at
relatively expensive?
we looked at it, it would cost us more money and more, and we don't do it with any other groups, so.
I know, but you tape our meetings here too, you know, so we're kind of special here.
Yeah.
I don't like the concept of having a Gmail account. My office has a website. We pay for the server, and whether I have 116 or 157 email addresses, I don't pay anymore. I don't know what the break point is or how it's done. It just surprises me in this day and age. You have a town with a very nice webpage, nice internet presence, and no town monitored email that is saved on the server, indexable on the server, backed up on the server. I don't understand.
Ours are. It's not members of boards and commissions that are.
You know, the solution to this problem is if you're conducting anything that's conceivably Board of Finance business, copy Donna. As long as you do that, it goes into the town system, it's FOI searchable, because everything she does immediately goes in there. And even if you had a different account, if you don't use it, it wouldn't matter anyway. So just copy Donna. And that solves the problem. And cost, except for Donna, who
Yeah.
has to deal with the emails coming in. Zero.
Is that a viable solution for you, Mrs. Treasurer?
That's what's happening now. That's fine.
So what's your pleasure?
So we'll just continue to do what we've been doing.
Is that gonna be a motion so that we can get this thing off the agenda?
Well, the motion should say, you know, if you're conducting anything that's POF business, copy Donna. So it goes into the system.
Yep. Someone wanna make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
You'll make that motion?
I will. I brought this up.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Michael second. Okay, any further discussion?
I was just gonna say, what we could do is that we tabled our policies and our manual until June. We could add that in
Yes.
to our policy manual. I think we usually do what Mr. Richardson's recommending and solve that problem, do it that way.
Yep.
If you'd like.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. The next item is citizens' participation. Any citizens have anything they want to say? Yes,
I need to say my name for the record.
yes.
Jill Grant. So I have a few things that I'd like to say. The first was just, I thought Prop 46 was calculated on the revenue and not like on the budget. So, I mean, it seems like you guys worked it out, but I didn't think that there's any reason, you know, it's like putting the cart before the horse. The budget is subject to the Prop 46 approval, so that just seemed backwards to me. Let's see. As far as so-called like surpluses from last year in the education budget, you know, most of that was for healthcare escrow, that healthcare account had been down to zero, it had even been negative at a point. So it's hardly accurate to call it a surplus when, you know, it's needed to, you know, have some play in that healthcare budget because, as you all know, we're self-funded. So, you know, there's, you need play there in case there's a big claim. And then, you know, 143,000 of this so-called surplus went to, you know, fixing of the schools, painting, repair of the gym floor, other things. And in the minutes of the September 8th Board of Finance meeting, Mr. Richardson, there's a direct quote that says, "I would like to commend the Board of Education and Superintendent's Office of the great job they have done in accomplishing a great many projects on this list as far as maintenance that need to get done." So, I mean, I don't understand why you're complaining about it when there are things that need to get done and you commended them in the September meeting. As far as the vote on the Prop 46 allowable, it's really disappointing. I mean, I think we should let the town decide because as a parent, you know, we are literally the last. We are the last town in spending per pupil, and we run a damn good school district. So, you know, I think that the least that could be done is letting the town decide whether we want to do the max of Prop 46 to try to keep that going, because how long are we going to be able to run such a great school district on last in per pupil spending? And a mention on the academy and like the cost of the academy. I feel like people are always throwing stones at the academy. The academy costs so much, the academy costs so much. We don't have it in our town available ability to run a high school. So we can say what we want about the tuition up there. It's an awesome school. We can't afford to run a high school here. So, I mean, you know, you can say, well, it directly detracts from our elementary education, but we can't afford to run a high school, and definitely not one of that caliber. So I think that, you know, we have to think of that in a different way a little bit. I guess that's it. I don't know, I'm really disappointed about the way this went, because I think it should be up to the town to decide whether we want the max of Prop 46 when even the max of Prop 46 is gonna have the budget be cut. I guess that's all I gotta say.
Well, I would like to make a comment. That's what the whole public hearing is for. So the public can take and put their input as to what the various things should be. And we.
But I guess I don't get it.
Let me finish.
Sorry.
And the other thing is Woodstock Academy. The cost at Woodstock Academy is much less than it would cost us to take and run our own high school.
Right.
Okay? That is an excellent value. You can't beat that.
That's exactly
Okay,
what
so
I said.
we're not knocking what it costs to send anybody to the academy.
He was.
No,
actually.
no,
He kind of
no,
was.
he was not. He was not knocking what it costs to send somebody to the academy. Because he knows that it's a lot cheaper for us to send our kids to the academy than it would be to send them to Killingly
That
or
wasn't what
any
he
other
said,
one.
though. That wasn't what he said, though.
Let me explain what I said was, the reason that our cost per student is low is because Woodstock Academy. The fact is that we save almost $3,500 per student for every student that goes to Woodstock Academy over the average of what it costs for a secondary school in the state of Connecticut. That saves the town of Woodstock almost $1.2 million. That $1.2 million ends up part of why we come in at 163. Add $1.2 million or $1.3 million, divide it by the total number of students, which is, let's say 1,000. Add $1,300 to our average spending per student, and then take a look at where we are in the ranking. That $1,300 is thanks to Woodstock Academy. It is a fantastic deal.
I
for the town of
agree with you, but
Woodstock.
that wasn't what you said earlier.
That is what I said, you just didn't understand what I said. I said the reason that we're as low as we are is because of Woodstock Academy, because they save us so much money.
Isn't this supposed to be citizens' comments?
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
Hello, good evening. My name is Linda Bernardi. I'm in my 9th year serving as tax collector for the town of Woodstock. For those of you on the board that don't know me very well or have never met me, I take my job very seriously. Because I handle a lot of money as a tax collector, it is extremely important to build a reputation of accuracy, honesty, strong code of ethics, fairness to all, compassion for the less fortunate, and a willingness to work well with others. I'm very proud of the fact that I've been able to maintain a 98.5% collection rate through the years, have brought everyone to within a 3-year delinquent status, have had outstanding audits each and every year, balancing to the penny in all areas, have been co-endorsed by both Republicans and Democrats, have kept a friendly, accurate, and open door policy to all taxpayers of Woodstock. I have also been contacted by the auditors in order to help towns with my procedures and policies. I am proud to be on the Woodstock Town Hall team and feel that we all work well together. On Saturday evening, I received a text from someone in Clinton, Connecticut, with an attachment of an article that they thought would be of interest to me. I was appalled to read my name in this article, which is distributed to every municipality in the state of Connecticut and was uploaded to Facebook. With all the good things that could have been pointed out about me, 2 board members chose to try to make me look as if I might be doing something wrong by receiving the stipend benefit, something of which I have no control. I feel this is a personal attack on me, my position, and an attempt to make me look as though I might be involved in an attempt to receive hidden money, be less than honest, or get a juicy story going about a tax collector that receives additional funds, since that title would surely get someone's attention. To top it all off, my marital status and my husband's position as chairman of the Board of Education was reported. I certainly see the importance of that with the stipend issue. I feel this was a way out of line, and again, another attempt to perhaps infer that there may be something wrong with going on with 2 key positions in a town. I'm not sure if this was a discrimination against a female, elected employee, or if I'm being used for some hidden agenda that I'm unaware of. Mr. Fortin should be able to relate to me here, since his wife is presently serving a term on the Board of Education. I think you would think it was way out of line if this was always mentioned every time your name was brought up. If I might interject here, the best thing I ever did was marry my husband, and you are more than fortunate to have him as a volunteer position, Getting back to the stipend. It has been well established that there are 7 people who receive this benefit. Put in another positive way, I am one of 7 people that do not require the town to pay for my health benefits, which is a large savings to the town. There is no other option for employees like myself that do not receive the insurance that I am aware of, other than receiving the stipend. But apparently, you should think twice, or you may find your name smeared around the state as a recipient. It may be easier to have the town spend more money and receive the insurance. The stipend has been around since 1990 and was part of the package when I ran for it and accepted the office for tax collector. The stipend is nothing that I control, the amount, have a say in, or is it new to the town? Would the town be better off if they were paying all 7 employees' insurance costs? By a show of hands on the board, how many of you have received this article I am referring to? Do you know who provided you with that article?
Yankee Institute.
The Yankee Institute gave it to all of you, or did Mr. Richardson, or?
They sent it to me and a number of other people.
Okay. If I could, I would like to have an explanation from the board as to why my name was singled out and importance to the article, why my husband's name was specifically mentioned, and why the other 5 names were left out. We might as well name everybody, or why was I singled out, is my question to the board, I guess.
I had nothing to do with that article. Nothing at all.
You were quoted in the article, or Mr.
Well, there
Richardson was
a
also
report,
quoted in the
so-
article.
Mrs. Bernardi, there was a reporter sitting there. He walked up and asked my name after I did it.
Somebody
I
mentioned my
understand.
name. How did he get my name?
How would I know?
I know, just flew out of the
Was the
sky.
reporter for the Yankee Institute here?
Yeah,
Who invited him
he
to
was
come?
sitting,
All I know is somebody walked up and asked me what my name was.
At no time in that meeting was her and the stipend put together, ever, so that makes you wonder.
Or my name. Go ahead.
Sorry. I guess you can understand why I would have been singled out. I'm not real sure what that is all about. Can you also explain to me why it's important to know who the names of the people are? Because I think the point of the problem is, or whatever, is that there are 7 people that receive the benefit. I don't think it matters who or who does not receive it. The other people receive insurance. Because I feel these people that do get it, I'm afraid these people will be treated with less respect than others, or made to feel frightened to admit that they receive the town benefit. Because that is a feeling around the town hall. I certainly feel like I have been treated disrespectfully in this matter, and don't deserve to be over something that's out of my control. In closing, I would hope that the members of the Board of Finance can see that the issue with the stipend should stop being about the people involved and start working on constructive solutions. I think we can all agree the town is fortunate to have these employees in their positions. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
I'm still concerned at how my name was brought into it also. I mean, I was just sitting here as, on the Board of Ed just to listen to what the budget presentation was for the town. And my name was brought in just to throw the mud around. And I'm just curious on whoever put that article in, who the genius was, who mentioned the names. Did anybody want to tell me who told this Yankee reporter, Michael Bernardi and Linda Bernardi?
Come on, guys, fess up. One of you did.
I told them who all the people are.
Somebody did.
I told them who all the people were.
How dare you? You don't have any idea who takes the stipend.
Yeah, I
That's
do.
just an assumption.
No, you don't.
It's only
You
an
come to your own
assumption.
conclusions like most of your
I
information.
requested a list from the first selectman of the names of those who received the stipends for the years 2000, fiscal years 2013, 14, and 15. After 7 weeks of stonewalling, I finally got a letter from the town attorney, which I'd be happy to share, that listed the total compensation for all of the employees in the town hall, which is public knowledge
That's correct.
by statute. And in fact, the statute reads that the duties of the treasurer shall include, the town treasurer shall receive all money belonging to the town, pay it out in the order of the proper authority, and keep a record of all monies received, when received, and of all monies paid out, when and for what and upon whose authority, which records shall always be open to the inspection of any taxpayer in such town. So my requesting that information was perfectly legitimate, which is why the town attorney sent it to me. Now, he didn't send me the list, which is all I asked for. Instead, he sent me all the compensation, which took about 5 minutes to figure out
Conclusions.
who got the stipends, because they're $14,000. It kind of sticks out.
Again,
You didn't answer the
Didn't
question.
answer my question.
I did.
No, you didn't. You didn't answer Mr. Bernardi's question, which was, how did this reporter find out at a Board of Finance meeting his name and Linda's name?
Only Linda's name and my name as a Board of Ed chair.
No, those were the only ones he put in the article. He
The
knows
reason
who they
is
are.
why, if you had a list of 7 names, you'd go, oh, let's use this one, it just seems odd.
What exactly
you
is the
had to
point
be
of
here.
identifying individuals? Is this a public shaming? Are we at a schoolyard here?
No, it's not, but here's what the issue is.
What is the point?
And here's why I asked for the names. There are parties who have a vested interest in these stipends. When there was an attempt to get those pulled in line with what is reasonable and what is, in fact, paid at the Board of
Any of you
Education.
guys have anything else to say, or is this gonna?
Right,
keep
you
going around and
rehash the
around?
same thing over and over and over again, Dave. And it was decided by your own board
That enough
that
is
it's
enough.
that right, enough is enough. And it smacks to all of us that what you then do when you don't get your own way is you go public and try to shame people individually because of this stipend.
It's public information, and the public has the right to
The
know.
public is aware the number of people that receive it. The public is aware what's budgeted for people's salaries. To publicly shame people, to make them afraid is completely
Nobody's being
unprofessional and inappropriate, and the rest of
I
you
have
should
to
be ashamed
disagree
for
with that.
allowing it.
We need
My
to
wife's
have
name
people
and my name
recognized
is
by
in
the
there.
chair.
You're right.
Okay. It seems you're not gonna get an answer.
I know that, Dave, thank you, that's okay.
Now, in the back,
Right. Well, with this particular article, somehow it's all over the internet. And if
Point of order, we don't have, he's not even a taxpayer.
So
Okay.
what?
So
What?
all
You don't
right,
have
He's a
taxes.
citizen of
all
Woodstock.
right, yeah, all right.
What's the matter with you guys? You don't pay taxes at all. I pay taxes.
So what?
He don't have the right to talk here.
Of course he does.
He does not.
That's up to the chair.
Really?
All right, do I have the right to talk
No.
or not? Okay. Chair, what do you say?
Taxpayers only get to talk.
This is a public
No, you
meeting,
do-
anybody
you
can
do
show
have
up,
a-
anybody can speak.
you do
And I'm a
have a
resident
right
of
to
the town of
talk.
Woodstock.
If you're a citizen of the town of Woodstock, you have a right to
All right,
talk.
I'm a citizen, and I'm a citizen of the town of Woodstock, and I attend the Woodstock school. The thing is with this article, I got a hold of it, what concerns me is that when my parents read it, they were concerned for you too, or, Mr. and Mrs. Bernardi, because if you're directing a particular at somebody, that's not right. Out of 7 people, those 2 people were mentioned, and those are the people that are going to get blamed for it. And they're very nice people, and I just don't think that's right. And we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to make sure this doesn't happen again, because we can't you're not going to get anywhere by shooting people down. It's just a fact. That's all I think. That's all I have to say.
Anybody else? I saw another hand. Yes, Mr. Evie.
Yes, I just wanted to point out to the board that there's the contradictory information sometimes that comes from Mr. Richardson. Because on one level, he talks about all the unfunded mandates that over the past years, I think he came up with the figure of like $500,000 or something, that the state has dropped over X numbers of years. Well, that's true. And where are these unfunded mandates reflected? A lot of it is reflected, or some of it is reflected, and I can't give you exact figures, in our budget. Every year that I've been on the board, there's been another unfunded mandate passed on to the taxpayers of our town. And that gets reflected by increases in our budget because we're not getting reimbursement back from the state, or they dropped it or whatever. And so it accounts for a portion of our budget. And it's happened every year that I've been on the board. And it will continue, obviously, in the future. So it's a little contradictory to me. And I'd also wanted to point out to the Board of Finance that I've been listening to all of this back and forth about this stipend now for months. And as a selectman who has to negotiate labor contracts with the people who work here, all of this finger pointing and calling people out and articles in the paper, as a negotiator, what the Board of Finance has done, and especially Mr. Richardson and Mr. Fortin, have poisoned the well in our ability to try to negotiate this stipend. If I was in the labor union, I wouldn't give up that because they feel they're under attack. So as a negotiator, how do I try to negotiate that, if I want to, out of the contract? You've completely poisoned the well.
What exactly have I done? What exactly have I done?
I just told you.
No, you said I poisoned. Well, what did I do? I asked questions respectfully.
If you had come to the Board of Selectmen a year ago with your concerns, we could have maybe sat down, and if it was such a big issue for the Board of Finance, then we could have sat down and said, okay, the next time we have to negotiate this labor contract, what do you suggest to do?
Well, frankly, Mr. EP, that's what I attempted to do. Was I wrote a letter to this board to discuss this issue. I brought it to this board on February 9th, and I asked this board, actually, I have another copy I'm handing them tonight for the same letter. And what I asked them to do is if we could have a substantive, objective conversation about this to decide if there is indeed a problem.
That was last month, Dave. I'm talking about, this has been an ongoing issue from last budget season.
You asked me what I would do. I'm trying to tell you what I tried to do. I brought it up on February 9th. I asked the board to read it, our board, not your board, our board, to read it so we could have a discussion on March 8th. At the 8th, on the meeting of the 8th, it was on the agenda. It was tabled to the 15th. It was agreed to by several members of the board. I didn't want it to go to the 15th, but that's what they wanted to do. For the meeting of the 15th, it dropped off our agenda and became somehow entangled and combined in the Board of Selectmen's presentation. That too was never my intention or desire, frankly. So the Board of Finance has never discussed the points of the letter I wrote to them substantively. I had an issue amongst ourselves, and at that point we would make a recommendation or ask us to get together. That's the way it should be done.
Dave, it's been an issue for over a year. Your letter of last month is immaterial at this point. It's been an issue in front of this board for a year.
I'm just telling
and
you.
It just seems to me that you have put the Board of Selectmen in a position that is impossible. If we wanted to have the ability to try to negotiate a concern of the Board of Finance.
I don't see myself as being fully responsible.
Well, I know you don't, but nobody seems to be responsible. Just like nobody's responsible for the Bernardi's names to be smeared all over the state of Connecticut. It's funny how that works.
I would just like to ask the other members of the board to please think long and hard about the number of times that individuals beyond town employees, former, tonight Dr. Barron was smeared. There's a lot of name calling and a lot of specifics being used by people. And although Mr. Richardson is correct that the public is entitled to know how much each position is paid, and by extension, he was able to figure out what people earn for the year. What everyone here needs to be very, very aware of is HIPAA laws protect individuals from, none of you should make it so that by identifying people who receive a stipend, that now we can identify who takes insurance, because that's a HIPAA violation. And it's a number, add that to the long list of things that you guys have done that are continuing to expose us to problems. So please reel this stuff in, use your heads, and think about this, because this nastiness, this singling people out has got to stop, and you guys are letting it go on every meeting.
Mr. Schultz.
You know, a year ago I asked about this, and the first selectman didn't want to be forthcoming about it. Now, we have an ethics agreement here, everybody signs it, and I just want to know, you know, how he can negotiate a contract that benefited himself by $3,200. That's the issue here, it's not who gets the stipends. You know, people could refuse it, you know, and you take the other fact is that the $100,000 of salary was hidden from the Board of Finance by sticking in a healthcare cost. It wasn't shown as an income. So, you know, now they're asking for a raise of 4% on their salary that appears on one side. I think it's grossly unfair. I think it's less than transparent. And I don't think the first selectman should have negotiated a contract that benefited himself. He's benefited himself from $62,000 to $79,000. Now, what if it's a truck? What if it's a land deal? What's the difference? If we don't have any teeth in our ethics, then fine. Just give him a mask and a gun and just do it the right way.
Stop
This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You know, you can look at every town around here, nobody pays a stipend the size of this. There are 85 people at the Woodstock Public School District that make less money than the stipends we give people. And it isn't a healthcare issue because it becomes money. It becomes your Social Security benefit, it becomes everything. So it had nothing to do with HIPAA, because you signed that you didn't need health care.
Again.
And the other thing I just think is really insane is that would somebody punish themselves by punishing the town by taking health care when they don't need it and taking a $4,500 deduction in a year? That makes more stupid sense of this matter. So, you know, a year ago we started down this path and he wouldn't answer the question. Well, we get to the answer and some people just don't like it. You're public employees, your numbers are public property. And what you earn is my information. And you basically, and I can show you the salaries of everybody else around here. The elected officials in Woodstock earn double what everybody else earns in Pomfret, Putnam, and around. And if you don't like it, find another job. If you don't like the public display of it, go somewhere else.
Yes, Mr. Bernardi.
I just want to say, you know, there were 7 names on that list. I did see the list, 7 names, and it specifically specified 3 names was unfair, no matter who, what, where, how, or what. I understand that it's legal and it's all public knowledge. I agree with that, Mr. Schultz. But to specify only 3 people just to smear a name, it's my turn. 3 names is unfair, and that's what you did.
No, I didn't. You have to ask the reporter. You sat over there. I didn't even meet him.
3 names out of 7.
He had the whole list.
Yes, down in the back.
Again, my name's short. I just had a procedural question. I have experience being a reporter, and I know that I would not come to a town the size of Woodstock unless someone called me and told me to be here, especially since the way they're cutting back on a lot of the news organizations. I also happen to know a couple of people who report for the Yankee Institute, and so I'm wondering, as far as it's not just a happenstance for a Yankee Institute reporter to be here.
Your wife is attempting to reach you on your cell phone.
Yes, your wife. The other question I had, as far as this procedural type thing for the Board of Finance, often when I was a reporter, I was regularly kicked to the Board of whatever's chairman to speak either on behalf of the board, or there was some sort of protocol in place for who was able to, not just speak to reporters. I mean, it's America, you can do it anyway. But I just had a question. When I was emailed the article, I read it and I was wondering where the other voices were on the Board of Finance, aside from Mr. Richardson and Mr. Fortin. I will tell you that I did think it was curious that you guys were the only people who were quoted in the article. I'm also curious about the list of 7 names. I have not seen it. I know this is public record, but how was it shared? Was it shared during the interview? Reporter's discretion is who they want to put in the article. You can talk to them and they don't even have to quote you. But if the paper was shared, was it shared through their interview? Was it shared via email? Was it given to him or her when they were present at the meeting? How was the information provided? Those are just questions that I have kind of out of curiosity of sitting here listening to all this.
They were given a list of all of the people.
Handed during the meeting?
No,
How would they provide it?
well before the meeting.
Okay, so when the initial contact was made with the reporter?
There's been discussions with the Yankee. I've had talks with them going back a year. This was a setup.
That was, I mean, I know you guys had also talked earlier about email addresses. It's all FOIable. All of your private email addresses are FOIable because you guys have presumably conducted Board of Finance business from your personal email addresses. That's one of the reasons I was curious about it.
Actually, the Board of Finance business is copied to Donna, so it's all FOIable. My having a discussion with the Yankee Institute, for example, is not BOF business. It's my business.
But as a reporter, I can submit an FOI to you and that make you prove it.
And you can try to go to court and make that case.
Will the FOI?
You can FOI everything
I'm not
that's...
FOIing anything.
No, but you can FOI anything that's Board of Finance business, because it's all copied to Donna, so it's all on the town system.
Thank you.
Same thing. All right, yes,
Totally different subject. On the
finally.
Cliff Davis, yes. On the, what you approved a little while ago, the guideline you gave us, I don't remember ever getting something like that in the past, where we had a guideline, other than to say you should be at 0 increase. I remember getting that every year. But I don't remember any guideline. I remember each year you give us a number that we have to hit. We squirrel ourselves away, we hit the number. But I don't remember a guideline. Has that ever been done before? Or in recent years, let's say?
I don't think it's been done before, but it's been the same thing, because we've had to take and change the Prop 46 calculations later on during the year.
I just don't remember ever, except maybe there might
We
be
didn't use,
$1,000, $2,000.
we didn't use the term guideline.
Right, so was it at this stage of the game that we were given a final number in prior years? No.
Pretty much,
It was
yes.
later than this, I thought.
Pretty much,
It was
yes.
later, I think, yeah. All right.
And then it was amended after the public hearing, depending on what the people had to say.
So at what
the
point
public
will this
hearing.
be turned into a final number that will be given?
After the public hearing.
Okay, so it would be my suggestion that we do nothing until after the public hearing then, because I'd rather just do it once and go to a final number when we get that.
So we're gonna do it on the public hearing night? Is that what's decided here?
Pardon?
It's gonna happen at the public hearing? Is that when you're going to do that?
No, it'll be after the public
So you're
hearing.
gonna do it at the final budget?
After the public hearing.
Are you doing it the night of the public hearing?
No,
You're gonna do it the next meeting, which will be
Yes.
the final budget?
yes.
So that means they have to rush back, make those adjustments, and we gotta run that ad with all those expenditures and details for the town meeting. This is why we typically do it tonight.
Based on past practices, what we've done tonight is give them a target right now,
Right.
and that's the number that they should hit.
And the only time we've changed Prop 46 is when they've cut a bus or something from the budget. That's when we've had to recalculate. And there's no buses in here. The only thing that could change is special ed, and that could go up.
Right.
That's right.
Or it
And
could
so
go
we
down.
would go, or down.
Go down.
In fact, I think last year, Mike was complaining, because I think he had to get up here 3 times to do the Board of Ed presentation before the public hearing.
Okay, anyone else? Karen, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Do I have a comment?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, you have a lot.
You really don't want me
to
making comments tonight. No, I do have one question. Are we supposed to be cutting this budget for the public hearing right now? Or is this a guideline and we're waiting for the final number?
You can consider this as your target. It
I will
doesn't
just
answer your
express
question.
then my disappointment that you are not allowing what's within Prop 46, and you're giving us a budget that does not even allow us to cover our special education expenses.
That's what the board voted on,
As a guideline.
as a guideline.
Let us know when we have a final number, and we'll do it. I don't think we have to really work on it.
Okay, anyone else have any comments? Okay, I have no correspondence and I have no announcements. Yes?
I didn't realize where we were gonna end up tonight. Yes, of course.
Just correspondence or
Yeah. This is to the members of the Board of Finance. I want to go over what took place over the last 2 months. And I started talking to Mr. Eaton about a minute ago. So at the February 9th regular meeting, during citizens' comments item on the agenda, I distributed to the Board of Finance membership and Christine an outline of concerns I had with the current stipend amount being paid to those town hall employees who waive healthcare coverage. My intent was for the Board of Finance to have a substantive conversation and review my concerns point by point. I asked the board if the item be added to old business and continue to our next meeting, which would be held March 8th. This would give the members an opportunity to read the document and consider my concerns. The board agreed. It appeared on the agenda of the 8th under old business, item B, entitled Review the Board's Letter. During the meeting of the 8th, when the agenda item came off, the chair suggested we table to the meeting of the 15th, when the board of selectmen would be present. Some other members agreed, so I went along, and I expected we would hold proper discussion at that time. What I mean is proper discussion amongst ourselves. When I received my packet for the meeting of the 15th, I was surprised to find the discussion of my letter was no longer listed on the agenda under old business. It didn't appear on the agenda anywhere. There were no copies of my letter enclosed in our packets. On Saturday, March 12th, I wrote the email to the Board of Finance membership and copied the treasurer, pointing out that the agenda item for the discussion of my letter was omitted. I also pointed out that it was not my intention to have the stipend issue get commingled with the selectmen's budget presentation that was scheduled for the same meeting, as I felt it should be a separate item. The treasurer replied to inform us the chair decided the two items would be handled together, so I conceded to the wisdom of our chair. At the March 15th meeting, instead of the Board of Finance having a discussion on the possible merits of my concerns, Mr. Walker, at the end of the general government presentation, distributed to the Board of Finance a half-inch thick stack of prepared documents, after which we received a PowerPoint presentation with Mr. Walker detailing the opinions of the Board of Selectmen in reference to my letter, as if to answer questions that were never actually asked of the Board of Selectmen. Any discussion of my letter was actually the current business of the Board of Finance, but not the Board of Selectmen at that point. The Board of Finance, not having a discussion, made a determination of any potential action plan. And an action plan can include no action. I feel the Board of Selectmen's presentation was premature. The process circumvented, proper protocol was not followed, and the decision-making process compromised due to the premature distribution of the document that the Board of Finance had not yet discussed or considered. I asked the Board of Finance to consider my concerns, but instead received an answer from the Board of Selectmen. It's important to note that no copies of that letter have ever been filed along with our minutes of February 9th. Nor was a copy included in our package for the meeting on March 8th. Because of this, it would appear that the Board of Selectmen had been afforded a greater right to know than the citizens. I'm asking the Board of Finance to reinstate the amended letter of concerns that I presented tonight